After Hours with Amy Lawrence.
Thanks so much for joining us. Our final show of the work week. Next few minutes, we're going to spend replaying a conversation that I recorded earlier on Thursday with just a man who's got an unbelievable story. You, as a sports fan, may know him as a member of Bellator's MMA. His name is Justin Wren. His nickname is the Big Pygmy, and he will explain that. But the other side of his life, wow, his story, it'll blow you away. It was really amazing to spend time with him on Thursday and hear him tell his story, even though I've heard it before from others who are around him, like his agent, Kelly, who happens to be a real good friend of mine. So she connected us. He's fighting again on March 3rd on Spike TV, again, Bellator. And I just wanted to be able to share this with you, but I thought it'd be way better if he told you. Phenomenal. Also, if you check out our show Twitter at After Hours CBS, you'll see a video that tells his story. It's really short. It's only 7 minutes, but we tweeted it out. And so I want you to go check that out too. But first, listen to Justin here on After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio. So I started out by talking about the fighting, and I readily admitted to him that I know nothing about MMA and very little about the technical side of his sport. But he had spent 5 years away. He took a 5-year hiatus before returning to the octagon, and I asked him to start, why did he decide to get back to it after all that time away?
Just a crazy amount of doors kept opening up and the opportunities just kept presenting themselves. And my wife, who never even knew me as a fighter, we met after I stopped fighting for that 5 years. She believed in me, kind of urged me to do it. And honestly, it all came down to, it was just a big platform to be able to give my Mabuti Pygmy family a voice. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to fight again and get there, shine a light on what's going on in their world of kind of darkness, their suffering. So to put a spotlight on that.
I really can't wait to hear more about your work in the Congo and your work with the Pygmies. But before we get to that, how do you train when you are in Africa? How do you keep up and keep in shape and be ready for fights when you are in the Congo?
Yeah, well, the well drilling really helped keep me in shape, that's for sure. But I actually took 5 full years away from the sport completely. So I wasn't in the gym. When I was back in the States, I was just learning water well drilling. And when I was over there, I was actually doing the drilling. But yeah, I mean, coming back to the sport, I was a wrestler. I was a 2-time national wrestling champion. Then in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I got heavily involved in that, and then was on the Ultimate Fighter reality TV show on Spike TV, and I was the youngest heavyweight there. I was 21 during filming, 22 while it aired. And so I had a background of that. I had 15 fights under my belt. Since coming back after the 5 years off, I've had 2 fights. I won them both. But I would say that I was underprepared for the fights. I took one on a 6-week notice, which was crazy trying to get in shape in that amount of time. Then the other one had an injury before, but just pushed through it. So I felt like I was fighting all on maybe mental toughness and heart and just passion and a purpose. And so now I've been able to take some time. It's been a year since my last fight, and I only get to go back to the Congo after my fights now. So I really want to focus on the fights so that way when I'm in there and I'm battling it out, I'm actually properly prepared. At least that's what I've done for this last fight. And so I'm looking forward to it. I get in there and hopefully knock this guy out so that we can knock out the water crisis.
I watched a video on your website, Fight for the Forgotten, in which you indicate that you decided you wanted to be a UFC fighter at age 13. What drew you to the sport itself?
Well, what drew me to the sport was, 13 years old, I grew up being pretty heavily bullied. I sat at the lunch table by myself most times, or at least a lot of the times, got pelted in the back of the head with chocolate milk spit wads. And there's just some very, hurtful bullying experiences growing up, which I know we all have them. But anyways, I was drawn to the sport because I was saving up my allowance and went to this Trader's Village or flea market. I was going to buy a BB gun, and I walked by a UFC VHS shop that was selling used VHS tapes, and the UFC was in there. And whenever I picked it up and looked at it, It said karate versus sumo and boxing versus wrestling and jiu-jitsu versus this or that. And I just kind of fell in love with it at that moment. I looked at it and I thought at first, initially, I bet these guys don't get bullied. And secondly, I loved the human chess match of it, that it had the Olympic sports of wrestling and judo and taekwondo, and it had jiu-jitsu, and it had all these different sports, and they were meshing them together, and the guys had to be skilled fighters in all the different crafts, or at least know how to defend it.
We're spending a couple of minutes with Bellator MMA's Justin Wren, who's getting set for his next fight on March 3rd on Spike TV. He's known as the Big Pygmy. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio. I got to ask you a random question before we get back to more of your story. We keep hearing the rumblings of a potential fight between Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, but a boxing match, not all of the different tools that Conor's normally able to use. What's your reaction to that?
For a boxing match, I think Conor is a great MMA fighter, and the best there is at his weight class, actually 2 weight classes. But then when it comes just to purely boxing, I think Mayweather would have the advantage, obviously being one of the greatest ever and undefeated. But I don't know. It's hard for me to see. I would love for it to actually happen because it would just be beneficial to both sports, even so much so to all the other athletes. There's a trickle-down effect. And so when those guys get in there and they get paid more, especially for MMA, we don't get paid like boxers do. And so, and I think we put it out on the line and have to train actually a lot more, 2-3 times a day, 6 days a week. I lived at the Olympic Training Center for wrestling. We trained 1 or 2 times a day, 5 days a week, sometimes 6. And so it just takes so much more, and we make a lot less. So if Conor gets paid more, then the rest of the bunch starts to get paid more eventually. So.
That is a great point. And we've heard Conor McGregor say specifically that you want to pay me $180 million. That was his number that he used on Conan on TBS. You want to pay me $180 million to step into the ring with Floyd Mayweather, then sign me up. But Justin makes a great point because it raises the profile of the sport MMA overall, whether he's with UFC or whether it's Bellator, which is where we'll find Justin Wren, who is fighting again on March 3rd. In the Southwest, and that's just the fighting part of his story. So the first half of the conversation was about fighting, and I'd love to hear him talk about how he got back to the sport after a 5-year hiatus, and also the challenges of trying to keep in shape when he's in the Congo and he's drilling water wells. And so that's where the next half of the conversation goes, about his work in the Congo with his other family. He calls them his pygmy family, and they're the ones who named him. So that's coming up straight ahead. Really excited to share that part of the conversation with you. Again, you don't even have to be a fan of fighting or know anything about MMA to appreciate his story. So Justin Wren on Twitter at The Big Pygmy, and we just tweeted a video. So I hope that during the break, of course, after Marco's update, during the break that you will take advantage of a couple of minutes to watch this video or bookmark it and save it for later. It's not only his story, but the story of the people that he has befriended and worked with and now lives with on a semi-regular basis. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio and CBSSportsRadio.com. I was watching the video that we've actually tweeted from our show Twitter at After Hours CBS, and it tells a little bit about his story and about his other work in the Congo. And there's a portion of this video in which Justin himself says, I was fighting against people, and I realized that I needed to be fighting for people. And that stuck with me. And so when I was speaking to him on Thursday, I asked him about that. I asked him, how did he get to the point in his life where he realized it was important for him to channel his fighting in a different direction?
Yeah, I think I've always kind of had it in me to like this kind of fighter spirit, a fighter's heart, and I don't know. I was just always selfish and fought for myself, and then I started fighting addictions because of that bullying and the depression, and then from depression I got addicted, and I battled a drug addiction for 6 full years, depression, clinical depression for 10 years. And so I just say it kind of comes down to my faith, and I just say God loved the hell out of me. And after that, I just didn't want to really I was used to living for myself for 23 years, and I thought it's about time to live for others, because this life isn't about me. How do we reach out, look out, love people? And so that's kind of what I want to do with my life: is love people, fight for the forgotten. And so kind of had my head on a swivel stateside and was volunteering at the Children's Hospital and a youth group and a drug rehab and a at-risk youth and juvenile detention center. And then when the opportunity came about to go to Congo, I just took it, went, fell in love with the people, even got accepted as family. My fight name used to be the Viking, but now it's the Big Pygmy. And my name comes from the name they gave me, which was Efeosa Mabutimang Bo. And Efeosa, first name means the man who loves us, and that's my Pygmy family that gave me that name. And then everyone else just calls me Mabutimang Bo. And the average height for the Pygmies is only 4'7" for the men. And so Mabutimang Bo just means the Big Pygmy. So that's what everyone calls me there.
Oh, that is fantastic. They must love you. You partner with Water4 when you're in the Congo working with the Pygmy. Clean water is something that most of us take for granted. In the United States and in developed nations around the world, we don't even think about it. Why is it so important for the Pygmy culture?
Yeah, well, you die without it, or you die with it when it's not clean. And so they've been living with so many different waterborne diseases, parasites. I've had them as well with them. And the suffering that I saw at first was just absolutely brutal. My first introduction to the water crisis was, me having a water filter, being able to filter everything I have and drop tablets in there and everything. And then a 1.5-year-old died, and his name was Andy Bowe. And I was actually holding him when he was real sick. He was denied hospital treatment not once but twice. They said, we won't waste our medicine on a pygmy animal. And they turned him away, and I was in another village and came back through there. And, so me and the guys, our team that we partner with, we partner with all the locals. And so this amazing group of people named Ituri Drillers now, we buried them, and the whole village mourned, and it was brutal watching that, sitting back watching it, and even kind of being among it and in it and inside the grave. It just wrecked me, and to know that at least 2,200 children under the age of 5 every single day die just because of dirty water. If they had access to clean water, that wouldn't happen. And so 2 million deaths a year, at least 90% are absolutely preventable. And so that's just kind of why it's become a labor of love for me. It's like, this shouldn't be happening, and we can stop it.
So what was it like to be there with your Pygmy family, these people that you care about so much, when they finally had access to clean water?
Man, it's this is a sports show. This is a great analogy. I feel like growing up, my dad was a sports photographer, and he got to go to some of the biggest events. And so I've been to the Super Bowl. I've been to the NBA Finals. I've been to the World Series. Been to the Pacquiao fights. I've been to the biggest UFC fights. I've fought in some of them. And there's nothing that can compare to the sound of a village cheering and the splash of the water hitting the ground and just the joy on their faces. It's from a much greater depth of joy. And I can't really compare it to anything else except for it drowns out the sounds of all those places I've been.
Wow, that is amazing. Amazing to hear. And you're right, it's life or death for them, not just victory on a field or on a court. We're spending a few minutes with Justin Wren, the Big Pygmy, who will be fighting on Bellator coming up on March 3rd. He's getting back into the cage, and he's been prepping and training. It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio. So, Justin, when do you get to go back and see your other family back to the Congo?
Yeah, hopefully it will be. So I fight March 3rd on Spike TV. It'll also be on Bellator.com. So I come back. I'm fighting there March 3rd, and then I'm hopefully headed out pretty immediately. It's going to be March, or I might have to skip until April and go in May. So we're working out all the details. But yeah, that's kind of my after party, is getting to go out into the forest and just see them hang out. They love to sing and dance and do these awesome paintings and just awesome stuff. So I get to go be part of that.
It's almost surreal hearing you talk about these two completely polar opposite sides of your life, Justin. The fact that you will be on national TV fighting in a cage, Bellator MMA, and then you'll end up back in the Congo with your pygmy family sleeping on the ground in a hut. Does it ever feel that way to you? Just surreal that these two sides of your life are so completely different?
Yeah, for me, I love the forest life. There's not all the technology and all the rushing and all the meetings. So I love it. Like I know that the first time we got water out there, even the government, some officials came out and said this is the first clean water source ever among the Mabuti Pygmies in our country's history. And we danced until the sun came up. And then we all decided to go into our huts and, sleeping on the dirt. And I've never met a Mabuti Pygmy that's had a blanket. The fire is their blanket. And so, but I went to sleep that night completely drenched in sweat on the equator, in the hot, humid forest. My cheeks were just so sore from smiling. So it is surreal, but it's just what I love. And after fighting's over, there's a good chance that I'll be headed over there a whole lot more, since that feels a lot like home to me.
Wow, just wow. I love hearing your story, and I'm going to have to watch my first ever Bellator MMA match coming up on March 3rd. You'll see it on Spike TV with Justin Wren, a.k.a. the Big Pygmy. Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with me and with my audience. I'm blown away. It was awesome to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And be careful watching your first fight. You might just fall in love with it. You have to watch a whole lot more.